Hey there guys, my name is Mosey and welcome back to Rissa Roams. Today we are going to be talking about everything I wore on my Appalachian Trail through hike this past year in 2024. So to get started, I guess we'll talk about what I wore at the beginning, and we'll start from the inside out. So I started with the REI merino wool bralette, and I wore that pretty much the entire way through. I really liked it. It worked really well. Mojo, who I hiked with, also had the same one. Sometimes when we did laundry together, we would get confused. So no complaints about it. It was good. The only reason I switched was because at some point on trail, I switched to a shirt that was a little bit more sheer, and I just wanted something less noticeable than a black bra. So at that point, I switched to just this little white bralette that I found at a Family Dollar in, I think, Lincoln, New Hampshire. So I wore that the rest of the trail. And then as far as underwear goes, I wore ex officio bikinis the entire way. I had two pairs, so one on and then one back up. Yeah, so those worked well. I would have really liked a pair of merino wool underwear, but unfortunately, I just didn't have it in the budget when I was getting started, and I never made the switch. These did the job, but if you talk to most thru hikers, chafing becomes an issue, and underwear isn't really helpful when it comes to that. So that's all I'm going to talk about when it comes to that. And then let's talk about socks. I wore Darn Toughs the entire way. I went through quite a few pairs. My preferred length was the quarter length. And so, yeah, Darn Tough's great because you can switch them out. I will say I only actually had one pair get a hole in them. So that was the only pair I was able to switch out. For a free pair, I had a lot wear thin, and I started to have a lot of discomfort and blisters. So I kind of wish they got holes in them better than they did, but those are my socks. And then to talk about the clothing that I wore the day I hit trail. So I started with the Mountain Hardwear Crater Lake Sun Hoodie. And I really liked this hoodie. It's super light and thin, comfortable, has the thumb holes in the sleeves. My two big complaints about this was the hood doesn't have a button or a drawstring or anything to secure it. So when it's windy, if you want to keep the hood on, it's just gonna fly right off. So that was a little bit frustrating. Another thing I didn't love about it, and this I totally could have fixed, I was just too lazy to ever address it, is it has this drawstring at the bottom with this tie. And I could have cut off the strings. There's no way just to pull it out. So that was just a little obnoxious. It would get in the way, especially I utilized a P style for most of the trail. So it would kind of get in the way with that. That was a more unique problem. And I will say I did get all of these holes where my hip belt fastened. And so I did end up switching out shirts because of that. But otherwise, I really like the Crater Lake hoodie. I would probably repurchase it again as far as sun hoodies go. I also own the REI Sahara Shade hoodie. It's just a little too thick. And the hoodie I switched to after this one also was just a little heavy and not quite my taste, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. So that was the Crater Lake hoodie by Mountain Hardwear. The pants that I started in, and there's a lot of talk about these pants on my channel. I have an entire video dedicated to them. And I will say, I still love these pants for their primary feature. So these are the Nara Go There pants. And the cool thing about these pants that I talk about all the time, I refer to them as my pee pants, is they do have a second zipper. So here's your primary fly. Beneath that is another zipper that goes all the way around so that you can use the restroom without taking your pants off, which is a game changer as a woman. It really makes trail just a lot easier and less stressful. So these only stayed with me until I reached Gatlinburg. And that was for a couple of reasons. I started to lose weight, and they were causing a lot of chafing issues for me, and I just needed to size down, and I wasn't able to replace these. They're also very thick, and as it got warmer, I knew I was going to want something lighter weight anyway. I realized that pretty quickly on trail. And one feature that is nice is it does have a drawstring to cinch the waist, but I was losing weight rapidly enough that I really needed a built-in belt feature in my pants. The drawstring just didn't quite cut it, and it would cut into me as I tightened it. The biggest issue with these pants, I would say, is they were not as durable as I would have hoped for the price point. This is an issue I have with a lot of pants as a lady with thicker thighs, but I was hoping that these would last longer than they did. I'll show right here, the seam on the thighs did rip open, and so we've got a lot of pilling here as well, so they just didn't really hold up the way that I'd hoped. Also, this is just a fun fact. These have been washed. This is how much mud there was. It's not going anywhere. It is part of the pants now. So yeah, so these are the Go There pants by Nara. And I will say, I definitely want to try their leggings now that those are out. But the pants didn't end up working for me on trail. Awesome feature. Love that this brand exists, but I did have to make a switch while I was on trail. All right. So I guess that then segues into what pants did I switch to? And I talk a lot about these pants on my channel as well. I ended up switching to the Columbia Winoga pants. I got these at the NOC, whatever you want to call it, in Gatlinburg while I was there. They didn't have a lot of pant options. I tried on this pair as well as a pair of Patagonia joggers that just weren't quite a right fit. And I'm really happy that I went with these. There's a few features about them that I love. One, they have this built-in belt feature, which is really nice because I did frequently have to tighten it as I was losing inches on trail. They also snap at the bottom, which is really helpful just to kind of keep your pants from dragging. And they're super lightweight. They dry so quickly. That was one of the best things about them, is even if I was in a downpour and my pants got soaking wet, it wouldn't take long for them to dry. And so those were the Columbia Winoga pants. The reason I talk about them a lot is because I had to change them out a lot. One, I was dropping pant sizes. I dropped 2 or 3 pant sizes while on trail, and I kept having to reorder pants because of that. And also, while I was in New England and Maine and New Hampshire, I was doing a lot of butt scooting down scrambles, and the pants didn't really hold up to that. The pockets would come unsewn pretty quickly and be flapping. The seam down the center would start to come loose. I had to sew it a couple times with dental floss. So I will say, when it comes to butt scooting, these weren't the best pants. Otherwise, they were durable. It was only really in Maine and New Hampshire that I had the durability issues. But for me, it was worth it, because finding pants that fit you is a really difficult challenge, at least for me. And so why I liked these is that they provided a lot of room in the thighs while still being you know, pretty fitted in the waist, and that was what I needed. And I loved, once again, how lightweight they were. Testing new pants out on trail just wasn't something I was interested in doing. And while I could have switched to a jogger, I liked having the zip fly because I was using a P style on trail. So that made it more convenient for me. So I was not going to switch pants on trail. I would continue to repurchase these pants. I really liked wearing them. And I hope Columbia keeps making them. They are on clearance right now, but I hope that the next season they come back. So those are the Columbia Winoga pants. All right, so to talk about the sun hoodie I switched to after the Crater Lake hoodie, I got this sent to me in Harper's Ferry. I had purchased it while I was at Trail Days and had it sent home because I knew I was going to need a new sun hoodie, but I wasn't quite ready to make the switch yet. I was waiting for that Crater Lake one to get a few more holes before I made the swap. So I ordered the town shirt sun hoodie, and I specifically wanted this one. It's the Desert Mariposa print, which is now discontinued. I wanted this one because I love poppies and it reminded me of poppies, so I just had to have it. I went with it for a couple of reasons. One, it has a button to secure the hood so it wouldn't keep flying off of me. I also really liked that it has the kangaroo pocket, and so it has some nice features, but I will say that this was not the shirt for me. Pretty much from the moment I switched to it, I wasn't really happy with it, and I kept wearing it because I bought it and I didn't want to, you know, make a switch unnecessarily. I'd contemplated going with the Jolly gear while I was at Shaw's in Monson. I almost bought one there. But talking with people who had the Jolly gear, they had a similar issue with it in that the Appalachian Trail is an incredibly humid, hot trail, and you're going to be wet all the time, and your clothes are never going to dry. And that was my issue with this, is it just was wet all the time. And this is a pretty thick material, and it would get incredibly heavy when it was wet. So that was my main complaint about it, is just the weight of it. It really became uncomfortable. And as the weather got cooler, with this always being wet and never drying, I was putting on a very cold, wet shirt every morning. And at some point, I just realized that this wasn't practical. With it getting colder, I needed something that would keep me comfortable. And so I decided to send this home, and maybe I will wear it on another trail out west where it is drier and less humid, and give it another chance. I'm not getting rid of it. It just wasn't right for this trail. So while I was staying at Old Colony in North Woodstock / Lincoln, I had this this shirt sent to me. So this one also looks a little bit rough. We've got some sweat stains, or stains from my pack, because they're kind of the color of my pack straps. So I don't know if it transferred or not. Excuse it, it is inside out right now because I still wear this all the time, and I just got this out of the laundry. So this is the Outdoor Research Alpine 150 Merino Wool hoodie. This is not something that I would wear in the summer. It is thin enough and light enough. I did wear this on some 80-degree days in New York and New Jersey, so I stayed comfortable in it. But the reason I wouldn't wear it is because the hood is actually a balaclava, which was very nice to have when it was cold and snowy and windy, to be able to pull this up over my face. I did even wear it one night when it was really cold to try and keep my face warm. Of course, the condensation from breathing kind of just left it wet and not very helpful. But yeah, so this is so nice. This is the shirt that I had to switch to the white bralette for, because you can see through it pretty well. It has the thumb holes. It's so lightweight. But what I liked about it most is, I was still soaking wet all the time from sweat. And, it didn't rain a ton on me after I switched to this shirt. Um, but wearing wet merino wool is just warmer than wearing wet synthetic from my personal experience. And this was significantly lighter weight than the town shirt, so it was not as heavy and bulky. Um, so I continue to wear this shirt on my hikes while I'm in New Hampshire right now in cold winter. Um, it has been a great shirt and I really like it and would 100% repurchase it and wear it again. My only complaint is I can't wear it in spring and summer because I would like a hood that is not a balaclava. Um, but yeah, so that is the Outdoor Research Alpine 150 merino wool hoodie. So highly recommend that as well. All right. So now that we've talked about the things that I wore pretty much every day on trail, let's transition into layers. So my mid layer that I wore all of trail was the Senchi hoodie. I believe it's the 60 GSM. I'll put it on the screen what it's called. So this is the thinnest, lightest weight Alpha Direct material. And yeah, this is from Senchi. And I really did enjoy this. I'm someone who runs very hot on trail. And I knew I was not someone who could wear a micro grid fleece. I would be sweating all the time. So this offered some warmth while also offering a little bit more breathability than I would with a normal fleece. My one issue, I never hiked in this, maybe once or twice, because where I got warm the most was around my neck. If I didn't have the hood up, this bunches up and I would just get very warm. If I were to repurchase, which I plan to, I would buy the quarter zip, half zip, I'm not sure what they call it, version of this, just so I could vent a little bit more while wearing this. Otherwise, really liked it. Had no issues with it. I was definitely noticeable when I wore it. I'll say it wasn't the most durable. It definitely has some holes in it, but for the most part, a good piece of gear. And like I said, I would repurchase. I would just get the zip version in the future. So that is the Senchi Designs hoodie. All right, my other layering piece, a classic among thru hikers, you can't go wrong, the Enlightened Equipment Torrid jacket. I was lucky enough to find this on Poshmark, so I didn't have to pay full price for it, which I was very thankful for. But yeah, the Torrid is popular for a reason. It is incredibly lightweight, it's synthetic, so you don't have to worry about it getting wet like you would with a down jacket. And it's really warm. I had this my entire time on trail. I started April 3rd on trail and I finished November 9th. So I spent a good amount of time on trail, several different seasons, and this kept me warm in all of them. And I never sent it home. In fact, this doubled as my pillow. So even during the warmer months, I was always putting it to use, and it's light enough. I didn't feel like I had to send it home. Now let's talk about my sleep clothes. I carried my base layers with me all of trail, and I know some people will send home their warmer sleep clothes when it becomes warmer weather. I chose not to do that. One, they acted as town clothes a lot of the time for me. It was helpful to have them when I was staying at hotels, or it was really hard to find loaner clothes bottoms at hostels, and so I would frequently be wearing these. Once again, they were light enough. I didn't feel the need to send them home, and the only time I would have considered it um, was around Harper's Ferry. At that point, I had already decided to flip, and I didn't know what sort of weather I would be facing up north and decided to keep them. I'm so glad that I did because when Hurricane Debbie came through while I was in the wilderness, I was freezing cold and I needed warm base layers to sleep in. So thankful I kept these the whole time. So all that to say, what were they? My sleep clothes were the Patagonia Capilene Air base layers. I absolutely love these base layers. Unfortunately, they're currently discontinued. I do not know if they are coming back. If this makes it to Patagonia, please make them again. I got these secondhand. I got one item on Poshmark and one item on Mercari. I'm not entirely sure which one was which. I was very thankful to find them there because I knew I wanted these base layers, but they are not cheap. Of course, they're not being produced right now. So if anyone knows where to find a pair of Capilene Air size medium leggings, let me know because I would love to get another pair. So these are the leggings. The reason that the Capilene Air is so special, in my opinion, is it is a blend of synthetic and merino wool. So you're getting the warmth of merino, but it's not as heavy because it has that synthetic blend in there. It doesn't smell as bad as synthetic because of the merino. And they were just incredibly comfortable and incredibly warm and some of my favorite gear items. I will say, like I said, I bought these secondhand. They even have the worn wear tag in them when I bought them. So clearly they had already been repaired and then resold again on Poshmark. So these do have quite a few holes in them. And I did stitch them up while I was in Franklin, but they continued to kind of pose an issue, which is why I would be so happy to find another pair of these. But I will continue wearing them until they fall apart. I love these leggings. And then, yeah, the same with the top, all of the same features. It is that merino wool synthetic blend. This is holding up pretty well for me. I've been hiking a lot in this in the winter up here as well. And so, yeah, love the Capilene Air Patagonia. Please bring them back. All right. So, of course, I didn't always sleep in that because it was miserably hot. This summer, I had days where it was 110-degree heat index. There were nights I was absolutely drenched in sweat in my tent and could barely sleep because it was so hot. I wouldn't be wearing those. To be honest, I might not have been wearing anything if it was that hot. But I did have some options for warmer nights. I picked up this North Face. I have no idea what style it is, tank top. I believe also in Franklin. I picked this up at that point, not because of the heat, but because I realized I really didn't like having wet long sleeves on, and it was warm enough at that point um, to wear a tank top while it was raining. I just preferred that option to having a wet long sleeve shirt on. So that was why I got this, but it ended up working as, either a shirt to do laundry in or my summer sleep shirt once it got hot. And so loved this tank top. Once again, I have no idea what style it is, but worked really well for me. And then I also carried these the entire time. These are a no-no on trail technically, because these are cotton biker shorts, and cotton kills. So you're not supposed to wear cotton on trail because it will get wet and not dry out and you'll stay cold. But I made the exception for these for two purposes. One, these were used in town as my like town underwear while I wash my other underwear, or sometimes just as my town shorts if I wasn't able to find loaner clothes. And then they also acted as my summer sleep bottoms. I was not concerned about wearing cotton in the summer, like you would be in the winter. I felt perfectly comfortable carrying these and wearing these. I did have a pair of synthetic biker shorts that I had intended to take on trail when I first started, but I found them less comfortable and they were actually heavier than my cotton ones. So I switched to these, carried them the whole way, and these are just from Target. So that was that. Okay. I also started trail with a buff. I had the classic AT buff that I feel like everyone has. And it was very multi-purpose. I found a lot of uses for it. I wore it like as a bandeau bra some in town. I wore it as a headband. I used it as a pillowcase. I'm sure I could go on and on about all of the uses that I found for this buff, and there were many. However, by the end, I had really stopped wearing it. I didn't care to wear it as a headband. It just felt very bulky. And all of the uses that I had for it, I either didn't care anymore to use it for in those ways, or I found other things to fill that void. So I ended up sending this home at some point, primarily because I got this hat, and I didn't need to wear a headband, which is how I'd been using the buff, and a hat at the same time. I've started with an outdoor research visor to keep the rain off of my face down south. I eventually just got tired of carrying it. I sent it home. It smelled terrible. It has since been thrown away. There was no salvaging it. But I just didn't really care for the hat and didn't find it necessary because it hadn't rained in a million years. At the point I sent it home, I was just tired of carrying it. I got this when I started to experience rain again. This is just a 5-panel hat from Amazon. I have no idea what the brand is. I can link it down below. I really liked it though. I kept it clipped on my pack when I wasn't wearing it, and a lot of the times I would wear it. But yeah, so with wearing this, I did not need the buff as a headband and ended up sending it home. That's that. Now let's talk about my rain gear that I used on trail. So I started with the Paca by Cedar Tree, and I think I'm actually going to do a gear swaps video. So I'll talk a little bit more about why I switched from this to what I ended up using. This is a poncho pack cover jacket combo. So it is a rain jacket that has a bump out for a pack cover. It zips, it has full length sleeves, unlike a normal poncho. It has a piece of cardboard in the hood, so that helps keep the rain off your face. Bad Bat used this on her through hike and recommended it, and that was why I purchased it. I had another friend, Purple Lotus, who wore it on trail and loved it. It was not for me, but I'll go into that in another video, I think, because I do have thoughts on why it was not for me, and I'm sure this video is getting way too long. So I ended up swapping over to the Outdoor Research Helium jacket. I got this in Gatlinburg, and I loved it because it is so lightweight, it is so breathable, and for me, it kept me as dry as I expected it to. I know a lot of people feel like this jacket wets out really badly, and I can see where they're coming from. For me, it wasn't much of an issue. I also had a very dry year on trail, so that may have impacted, my thoughts on it. I didn't experience a lot of rain, but I carried this jacket, all except for the first 200 miles, and enjoyed using it so much so that I ended up buying the Outdoor Research Helium rain pants while I was in New Hampshire. Like I said, I didn't encounter a lot of rain. I did have that rain in the 100-mile wilderness, and I thought about getting some rain pants then, but wasn't able to acquire any. I had a rainy day in the whites as I was coming back to town, and that was the day that I purchased these. I really didn't get to use them in the rain though, so I don't know how well they would do. It didn't rain much after I purchased them, but I did wear them a lot in the mornings when it was cold, because I did have some very cold mornings as I was finishing my hike, a lot of snowy days in Vermont. And so it was good to have another layer just to keep some warmth in on those cold mornings. And so, yeah, Outdoor Research Helium rain pants. Like I said, I can't speak to them as far as it comes to rain, but they did keep me warm. All right, and discussing things that were keeping me warm on trail, we'll talk about a few little miscellaneous items. So my beanie that I ended trail with, and also kind of began trail with, was the Outdoor Research Trail Mix beanie. I started with the blue version of this, which I purchased, and gave it to my friend Michael when he came to visit to hold on to, because it got too warm and I didn't need to carry it. I didn't end up having him mail that back to me, but while I was in Maine and met Step, the trail angel, he gave me this beanie to wear. This beanie has been worn by, I want to say, 4 or 5 through hikers. It's kind of the traveling hat of the Appalachian Trail, and I did promise to give it back to him so that it can continue with future through hikers. It's a little hard to pass along because I did become very attached to it, and I've still been wearing it, and I like the black a lot better than the blue one I have, but I will give it back to you, Step, next time I see you. All right, and so I started with the Z-Packs Possum Down gloves, which were really nice. They were very, very warm, often too warm, and so I would be taking them off and putting them on, and taking them off and putting them on. My issues with them are they only come in one size, and they shed. So they were too big for my hands, and I would find the black possum down fur all over everything whenever I would wear them. But they are incredibly warm, so, you know, what more can you ask of them, I guess. I also gave those to my friend when he came to visit, and like I said, I didn't have him send me that stuff back. I was going to pick up gloves, and I didn't really get around to it. Pizza Bastard loaned me some while I was staying with him. I still have them in my possession somewhere, but they were just very thick and heavy, and it was difficult to do anything with my hands while wearing them. So it was hard to pack up camp, which is when I really needed gloves. That was when my hands were the coldest. And so when George came out to visit me and hike on trail with me, he actually let me use his REI Polar Tech gloves when he left. So these were also a little too big for me because they belonged to George, but they did the job. And so I have been using these since Massachusetts, finished trail with them, and I've been using them some up here in New Hampshire as well. So, all right. And that brings us to our last thing to talk about, and arguably the most important thing that you wear on trail, and those are shoes. We'll get camp shoes out of the way first because those aren't really essential. Many people would refer to them as a luxury item, but they were very important to me, not only for comfort at the end of the day, but also sometimes as shower shoes in hostels. So I started with just a pair of, I call them Fakenstocks. They're Birkenstock knockoffs, the black rubber ones. Wore those for a while. They started to fall apart. They are now in the trash somewhere. I ordered a replacement pair. Unfortunately, they were not very comfortable. They didn't fit the same, and ended up having to get rid of those. And I just picked these up from a Walmart. And so these went from, I think I got them at Penmar, from there until the end of trail. And I still use them some now. So they're hanging on. And then trail runners. So I opted for trail runners as my trail shoe. I know a lot of people use boots. I had friends that wore boots, but I think most people these days are going the trail runner route. Had a lot of people try and convince me to switch to hiking boots, especially with my ankle issues, and especially once I got on rockier terrain. I didn't think that it was necessary. I do have boots at this point for winter hiking, but I will say I still prefer my trail runners. So the pair that I started with, these were the Topo Terraventure. I want to say these are the twos. It could be the threes, but I think they're the twos. And I wore these until I reached Fontana, at which point I realized that they were blown out where they meet the sole. And so I had my parents so kindly drive up my backup pair of Terraventures to me at Fontana Dam, and I wore those until I reached Hot Springs. While I was in the Smokies, I started to experience some Achilles issues, and it became pretty clear that the Terraventures weren't really the right shoe for me. They are a very minimalist shoe. They don't have a lot of cushion. Those in particular have a 3mm drop, and I needed more than that. So when Michael came to visit me on trail, we went to REI and I tried on a lot of shoes there. There weren't a ton of options in my size. There were Hokas, but I had heard a lot of durability issues about Hokas and was hesitant to try them. So I went with the Solomons. I wore the Solomons for about 100 miles until I was able to get another pair of shoes to try. My Achilles was much improved with them, but they were too narrow and caused me a lot of pain. So I talk about these a lot in my videos, but I switched to normals. So this, I kind of say it's a cottage brand, but Kilian Jornet, who was an elite runner for Salomon, created his own shoe company. And so these are the normal Tourmere 2.0s. And they also have an 8mm drop, the same as the Solomons that I wore. They are incredibly durable. I wasn't sold on them at first. It took me a little while to commit to them, but at this point, this is my hiking shoe, and I'm not sure that I'm gonna try anything else. So this is the last pair that I wore. I went through 3 pairs of these. Each of them lasted between 530 and 630 miles. And my biggest issue with them was they would start to kind of come apart at the back there. So I would duct tape the heel just to keep that from rubbing me. But the tread still looks pretty good. I really like the material that they're made out of. It's not waterproof. It's very breathable, but as you can see, it catches all the dirt. My feet stayed very clean wearing these shoes. And so yeah, I loved the normals by the end and will continue wearing them. All right. So if I'm not mistaken, I think that is everything I wore on my Appalachian Trail through hike. If I forgot anything, well, sorry, I guess I'm not going to talk about it, or maybe I'll talk about it later. Maybe you who watched all my videos will remember something that I didn't and can talk about it in the comments. But that is my review of everything I wore. Thank you so much for watching this, I'm sure, incredibly long video, and can't wait to see you next time. Have a good one, guys. Bye.